I was thinking last night and this morning that they had a few more hours to decide if they were going to postpone it. And I think that the pictures we've seen, the images, and then the decision that there would be another day of action on Tuesday during the state visit probably tipped the balance for the Élysée thinking and made them pick up the phone to 10 Downing Street, which is, of course, what they did in the first instance. So, no, I think it's very sad. I don't see it as a major embarrassment. I think it is a reality check of what's going on in the streets of France at a time when people are feeling obviously very angry. There's a lot of trouble, a lot of rioting, a lot of bonfires and things around the place. I think it makes sense. And it looks as though both our own king and the president of France will want to reinstate this visit as soon as they can.
Are you surprised how late it was cancelled, or again, is that not really a factor for embarrassment? They just left as much time as they could?
I suspect that they were hoping that it would be possible to keep the visit intact, even if they had to change the venue of the banquet from Versailles with all its historical significance and so on in the Hall of Mirrors to a venue in Paris. As I say, I suspect that it was the announcement that there will be another day of action on Tuesday, together with the fact that overnight there were more than 100 French policemen injured, a lot of arrests, a lot of trouble, probably made the president and his staff think, you know what, this is supposed to be a real showcase. This is supposed to be a celebration of a revitalized, refreshed visit with our nearest neighbor, and we don't want it to go wrong. There's too much risk involved, and so let's put it off. So these things can be done at the last minute. I think you couldn't have left it much longer than this morning if you're going to undo all the detailed planning that's gone into a visit of this kind. But I think everybody will understand.
I just wanted to flip it round again on this topic of whether it's embarrassing for the French government or not. If this was a visit to the UK by a foreign head of state, but we were fearful that protests would be taking place in some level that could be disruptive to the visit or embarrassing to the visitor that was coming, would we not be asking questions about suppressing free speech and the like, or not? I mean, I'm reminded of President Trump's visit in 2018 to the UK, where there was a lot of protest, but that wouldn't lead to a cancellation.
No, the President Trump visit, I recall, a lot of care was taken to keep him away from lots of people, and quite a lot of the travel and the venues were out of town, if I'm not mistaken. The point about this is that it was a state visit, which the 2018 one I don't think was, correct me if I'm wrong, and it was, a lot of it was to be public. It was to be a public celebration. You would have had, horses in the Champs-Élysées, and imagine if people had thrown firecrackers at them and there'd been all sorts of trouble. That would have been the story, rather than, as I say, a celebration of a very important relationship after a few years when our relationship has been pretty bad. Of course, if you're right, if the ball had been on the other foot, so to speak, the boot had been on the other foot, we wouldn't have wanted to cancel a really important visit. And to the extent possible, you mitigate the risks. But I think in this case, and Paris is a country where sometimes when things really do get a flare up, dans la rue, in the street, as they say, you just have to face up to the reality and draw a sensible conclusion. I think it's about risk management. And the risk, I'm afraid, of this going wrong and producing the wrong results was such that it was best to postpone.
I'm also interested in your perspective, given that you work so closely with the now king. How disappointed he will be, and how involved he would have been in picking France as his first big official foreign trip, given that, of course, now it won't be the first, because he still is doing the part of the trip to Germany. So France, I guess, slips down that order. Would that be a disappointment to him, and would he be involved in that?
I think it will be a disappointment. It was made clear, even without an official announcement, you remember shortly after the Queen died, that the king hoped that his first visit abroad would be to France. And I think he, other members of the royal family, British people actually, were very touched by the tributes that were paid to the Queen, to the royal family in general, by the French people, despite the fact that we've had a few years of frankly difficult politics since the Brexit referendum with France. And I think the king probably wanted to respond to that. There is an important relationship with France, which is not just about the heads of government, prime minister and president. It's important also that our head of state, our king, queen as it was, and the president also have a relationship. And we have a king who's been in France 35 times on official visits in his career so far. This would have been his first ever state visit to a country of which he's very fond, which he knows well. So I'm sure he'd be disappointed. But, you know, life goes on. He will go to Germany with the Queen Consort instead on Wednesday. And a spectacular, I'm sure, visit to France will be reinstated when conditions make that possible. Will he be disappointed? I would imagine that he would be, but he will, of course, have understood the judgment reached by the two governments, because he acts, of course, on the judgment, on the advice of the British government. And the two governments, I'm sure, reached a conclusion pretty quickly together this morning that it was best to put things off.
And just finally, Sir Peter, gauge for us your assessment of the relationship between the two countries, the governments rather than the heads of state. Do you think that is much improved all of a sudden?
It feels to me that it's a lot better, yes, because we have a prime minister now who has decided to try to fix the problems that he can fix of the post-Brexit relationship. One thing he's done is, of course, delivered on the Northern Ireland Protocol. That has begun to unblock a number of other parts of our relationship with the rest of the European Union, including with France. We've got a good relationship on defence and on intelligence and so on. There is a new understanding on the small boats bringing all those tragically sad refugees across the Channel, which we didn't have before. Who knows whether it'll work, but there's obviously political will for that. And I think Rishi Sunak clearly wants to make the relationship with our nearest and most important neighbours work a lot better, whereas, dare I say it, some of his predecessors seem to be more interested in blaming them for things that had gone wrong in the implementation of Brexit, rather than trying to make the relationship work as well as it could. And I think this Prime Minister has a different attitude.